My name is Lauren Windle, and this is the Good Pod Guide, the podcast that points you in the direction of other podcasts you might enjoy, thus saving you time, research, and brain power. As a kid, there were a few books that I absolutely loved. I think my love affair with books started with Kip and his Magic Key, and then moved on to We're All Going on a Bear Hunt, which is obviously a total classic. I even started quoting the line, "You can't go over it, you can't go under it, you've got to go through it," in my inspirational addiction public speaking that I was doing, until I realized that everyone was quoting it and it was all over Instagram. And then I felt a bit basic, so I dropped it from my repertoire. Anyway, another kids' book, which I think has really resonated with me and come with me through to adulthood, right, is the one about the hen who made the cake. Do you remember that? Where no one else on the farm would help with the hen when she needed help making her cake. And then they were all just there ready to eat the cake when it was done. And she was like, I'm sorry, if you can't help with the production, you don't get to reap the rewards. And I feel like I think about that a lot when I feel like someone is trying to reap my rewards without contributing to their production. So I'm really grateful to that hen for that. Anyway, another educational children's book that a lot of us will remember fondly is The Horrible Histories. I used to love those books. And since I was a kid, they've even turned it into a popular TV show, which I haven't watched, but I'm aware of and have seen kind of in the background when there were kids around, I guess, or when I'm like changing the channel to something else. Did you know, though, that Greg Jenner, the fella who wrote those books, has now put together a podcast for us adults? This is the focus of today's review, and it is You're Dead to Me. This is the perfect blend of history and comedy. It's marketed as the history podcast for people who don't like history. And in each episode, he's joined by a comedian and also an expert to shed light on an interesting aspect of the past. They really do pick interesting aspects of the past too. For example, Joan of Arc, the witch craze, the Victorian Christmas, the history of chocolate, Oh, now we're talking. There's also an episode on the Mayflower, and they explained also in the episode on the history of football how back in the day, a pig's bladder was dropped into the middle of the town centre and the townspeople all wrestled over it as part of some sort of community activity. And that's how football started. I've butchered that story. I've absolutely butchered that story. But if you listen to the whole podcast, you'll get a far better version of it. But I did think that was interesting. They also did an episode on Notting Hill Carnival, which talks about the history and origins of the festival back in the 1800s in Trinidad, so for anyone who's sort of gone along there, quite nice to know how it all started and what the deal is. There are 60 or so episodes at the time of recording this review, and some of those are doubles, which sounds weird, but let me explain. The original recordings are different length a bit, but they're about 45 minutes. But there's a whole batch in the middle where they re-recorded the same episode, or re-edited it probably, and cut it down to 30 minutes so that it could go onto the radio. So there's a radio edit batch, which is slightly tighter. And I'd actually recommend starting there to see if you like it. It's a shorter version of the same episodes. They will have picked out like the very best bits. And then if you're into the sort of small selection that have been done for the radio, then you might want to dip into some of the other ones. I loved this. I do enjoy history, but I really don't enjoy boring history. And this just fits the bill for me. If you have a hankering to know more about Stonehenge or the pyramids or vampires in Gothic literature, then this is totally for you. In the next episode, I tell you about the time I chased Harry Potter down the street and review the podcast, Katie Piper's Extraordinary People. For more info on the Good Pod Guide, you can check out our website, www.goodpodguide.com, or follow us at Good Pod Guide on Instagram and Twitter.